And we're just super appreciative for Ben being here today to share his message. And without further ado, Ben Utecht. Awesome. So, Ben, you obviously played football growing up, but what other sports did you play, and who kind of influenced you to participate in sports at a young age?
Yeah, that's a great question to start with. Also, I was wondering, can we carve out some of the donations for the Utecht Wedding Fund in the future? Because 4 daughters is insane. So, I grew up at a time, you remember this, we grew up when even colleges were promoting recruitment for multi-sport athletes, right? So the more sports you could play when I was growing up, the better. The more it talked about your athleticism, whereas today, for parents in the room, that by the time you're in middle school, you really got to choose your sport. And so it's changed quite a bit. So, the difference between when I grew up and now when my daughters have grown up is totally different. But I actually was a 4-sport athlete. So I was football, hockey, baseball, and track. And my love for the game of sports came out of my family, came from my dad. And if there's any North Star fans in the room, you may remember my grandfather, Bob Utecht, who started Let's Play Hockey and was the ringside announcer for the Minnesota North Stars. So every time you go to a Wild game and you hear Let's Play Hockey, that was my grandfather. So I grew up, that's why I played hockey instead of basketball. I should have played basketball at 6'7", but that was the nature of sports growing up. So I was a multi-sport athlete.
Awesome. So can you just touch on the importance of sports, and then also what lessons you've learned from your sports that you've taken into your life now?
Man, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for sports. And sports is this beautiful platform that ties 2 incredibly important things in life together, and that's performance and play. Performance and play, right? I mean, on the performance side, when you think of the life skills that we're teaching kids, integrity, courage, excellence, execution, hard work, leadership, all of these skills that are directly connected to how they perform on the field of their play, but totally transferable into life and how we serve our families, how we serve our friends, right? How we serve our employees in the workplace. And so there's an incredible application that we're building up. And because sports nationally starts at such a young age, there's an incredible opportunity to create a culture that really focuses on the human development of these adolescents. And on the play side, what we want to do is inspire kids to understand what it means to love something, right? Because as humans, as you know, when we put our flag in the ground, when we dig our heels in on something, it's because of what we believe, right? So we really have the opportunity to inspire the power of belief in these young kids, to really understand what it means to love something deeply, and how is that connected to loyalty? How is that connected to commitment and devotion? All of these wonderful qualities that can enhance their lives in the future. And so the combination of those two, and especially as a parent, it's important to understand, how do you parent through performance and how do you parent through play, so that you're providing that balance and not burning out our kids, as they're really trying to find what they love to do in life.
Are there any specific examples for you now, being in the workforce, where you're you're getting ready for a meeting and maybe you're channeling in your inner athlete to prepare?
Sometimes I still want to hit people when I'm in the workplace. I'm sure you guys can attest to that, but it's a great question, Max, because somehow I found myself in the HR industry. So corporately, I'm a chief culture officer for True North family of companies, which is a private equity group here in Minneapolis. We own 28 companies. And I oversee all of the culture of those organizations, from hiring to leadership development, employee development. And I got into owning a behavioral assessment company, as you know, Max, and so really trying to use data and statistics around how we help people reach their potential as humans in the workplace. And so I would say that, there's been a tremendous crossover, right? So all of my passion for human development has really come out of my time spent with Tony Dungy. Because Tony was the first to win a world championship built on what's called servant leadership, right? The belief was if you build better men, you get better football players. And what Tony Dungy created was an objective system on how to do that. If I'm going to say that the Colts way embodies integrity, which means to be honest or to do the right thing, then I better have a system in place that actually develops integrity in my players. I don't just want to do the traditional mission, vision, value statement on a website that's aspirational in nature. I want to focus on how do I inspire these beliefs and values through an objective training system so that we're actually growing and improving the life skills of our athletes. Because if I do that, then the way that they approach their performance is going to be with a higher level of integrity. And so all of that came out of an NFL locker room, believe it or not, which led to a world championship against the Chicago Bears. When I was coming in today, my heart sank a little bit because I passed a gentleman with the Chicago hat on. I don't know if he's in the room here, but if he is, I apologize.
We kicked him out.
I'm sorry for that. Yeah, I'm sorry for that. Actually, I'm not sorry because this ring is pretty sweet. No, but that's really where that crossover began, was being mentored by somebody that looked at culture objectively, right? While the world looks at it subjectively, right? And so to create that absolute truth around how we can develop people is radically important.
I've heard you share the acronym system. Can you share a little bit more of like the Tony Dungy teachings and like the word system? That really stuck with me.
Sure. Yeah, so my favorite acronym for system is save yourself time, energy, and money. Right, so a system creates accountability lanes. And it becomes a rigid game plan. And there's as you know, in work when we create systems, there's a lot of work up front. But if you build the system well, then it takes over and it becomes scalable. And so that was Tony's approach to doing that. So for example, when it came to collaboration, right? How do we build more collaboration? One of the things that Tony created was a small group system. So outside of the locker room, we would get together once a week during the season as a small group with different players on different side of the line of scrimmage. And we would break bread together, and we would go around each of those players, inspiring them to share and be vulnerable with the stories and experiences that they dealt with in life. And then we had follow-up questions that guided us through taking those experiences, and then how can we apply them to the football field. And so practicing that consistently over the course of a year develops such a stronger cohesion between the players, right? And his whole goal in our first team meeting, he said, look guys, if you're sitting in this room and your entire life is wrapped up in the identity of this sport, you've totally missed the purpose of your life. And he said, my job is to win. Don't get me wrong. My job is to win. But also my job is to build a family. And the acronym for family, as you've maybe heard from our Gopher coach as well, is forget about me, I love you. Right? And so it's so interesting how we call these the soft skills of life, when I think that they're the hardest and the most metallic skills that we have. And if we can understand them better, and if we can figure out how to tie them into our life and business strategies, we have a better, our opportunity to develop people just increases significantly.
So it's not every day that a room like this gets to hear from a Super Bowl champion. And
not in Minnesota, that's for sure. But we're going to change that. and I'm a Vikings fan. Listen, I'm a Vikings fan. I wanted to play for the Vikings so badly, but we had great tight ends in Minnesota, so the timing
didn't work out.
That was just a joke.
But it'd be great to hear a little bit about like that year that you won the Super Bowl. Like, was there anything different on that team that made it super special? And then was there any other sports memory that topped that Super Bowl?
Oh my gosh, how do you top that? if you ever watch Tony Dungy on the sidelines, right, and he wrote his first book called Quiet Strength, I would say that the words that I just used to describe Tony is authentic and consistent. I mean, what you see is what you get. And I think what was really unique about that Colts team is he was able to really create such a strong balance, right? His whole goal was to never be on the mountaintop and to never live in the valley. But it was always to find that trail that took you right across the middle and to stay there. So no matter how big of a win we had or how big of a loss we had in that Super Bowl season, the goal was to contain our emotions and to stay focused on the prize. And I think that the AFC Championship game against the New England Patriots when we were down 21 points going into halftime is a great example of that. I mean, imagine that. We're walking into a locker room down 21 points to arguably the greatest quarterback in history, and there's 5 or 10 Hall of Famers off of that New England Patriots team. And for Tony to come in, as he always did, with his quiet strength. Sometimes it was frustrating because you wish the guy would come in and flip a table and get you riled up. But he was always consistent, and he just came in and he said, "Look, guys, we've got nothing to worry about. We talk about this all the time. The Colts way means if you play efficiently, don't make mistakes, and do your job well, there's no team in the NFL that can beat us." And I think that just again secured that balanced spirit within the team to go back out and have the greatest comeback in AFC Championship history in order to go on to the Super Bowl. So that was, I think what differentiated that team. There's 2 moments that come up when I think about that could rival. One was, and this is a great topic for today, in Hastings, they had an incredible football program for elementary kids called Little Raiders. And so I started Little Raiders moving to Hastings in 5th grade. And we were playing the green team. I still remember, it's just so clear. We were playing the green team, and I was playing defensive end both ways, but playing defensive end on the line of scrimmage, and the ball was snapped. And I swam this kid on the outside, and I beat the quarterback to the handoff. So I ended up taking the handoff from the running back and took it all the way to score a touchdown. Those are the moments for those kids when you watch the video and you see their faces lighting up, right? Those are the moments that plant the seeds into firm soil that forever can change their lives. And then my senior year, we won the conference championship against Woodbury. And I had an injury earlier in the season, so I missed the last third of the season and came back in the game with 15 seconds left, and we needed a touchdown with an extra point to go up 28-27. And it was a Hail Mary situation. And I went back in first play since coming back from the injury and jumped over triple coverage, caught the ball, and we won that game. So those moments, even with winning a Super Bowl, are still so special and a part of my athletic story.
Awesome. So then you're the father of 4 daughters. We've got parents in the room now. What advice would you, Max and myself included, what advice would you give parents these days to be a good parent to kids in sports?
Man, that's probably the most important question today. I would say that my wife and I have really tried to deeply understand what it means to be intentional as parents, and that intentionality shapes the way in which you choose to coach your children, both in sports and in life. And so, as we talked about that balance between performance and play, that's been a big topic of conversation in our house. And my wife and I have chosen to hold each other accountable. She was the captain of the University of Minnesota women's golf team, so she was also a great athlete. And so we both get it. We both know where it comes from. But at times, and parents, you know this, at times that competitive nature takes over, right? And sometimes we don't even realize the tone that we're using. And so we've been a great stability platform for each other to step in and to remind each other how important that balance is between coaching our kids to improve their athletic capabilities, but also inspiring them to play for the love of the game and not wanting to push them beyond a mental barrier that could lead to burnout. And so we're trying to, we ask our kids a lot of questions. And I teach this all the time in business. I mean, the power that exists within asking the right question. Right? We ask questions all the time, but it's asking the right question, which is going to give you the right answer that you can then apply and see success from. So really asking your kids, doing your best to inspire them, to be vulnerable and to talk with you about how they're feeling. And then don't just cast them aside because you want to focus on the performance side, right? Take that in and figure out how do you apply kind of what their emotional foundation is to what their athletic foundation is, so that you can always, work on helping them on both sides.
Awesome. Well, Ben, any last words that you'd like to tell this group? We got a ton of eager golfers ready to get out on the course today, but any final words that you'd like to say? I
mean, look, fundraising is hard, and the data that you just showed or that you just saw was, to me, was incredible. I mean, the fact that you've got one person running this incredible foundation with a wonderful board, and that all of the money is going towards helping these kids should reassure you that whatever you choose to give is actually going straight to the work that they're describing. And so if you've already given, if you haven't yet, I would just encourage you to really reach deep, and let's help them today get from that 82% to 100%, and I will be a participant in that. So do whatever you can, because these kids matter and they need it.
Awesome. Well,
Awesome.
thank you, Ben, so much for coming on.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Athletes in Sports Podcast. If you want to hear more inspiring stories from athletes, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on all of our social media channels. Let's keep inspiring kids to get in the game.